Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're jumping into a couple of Imperial milk stouts. It's been a while since I've had beer from either brewer, so I'm particularly excited for today. We're going to be starting with Weldworks Brewing Company's Fudgy Grams. This is an Imperial milk stout brewed with fudge, lactose, milk chocolate, and graham crackers, specifically over 70 pounds of Keebler graham crackers per barrel. So that's just a whopping amount. 10.7% on this one. They're based in Greeley, Colorado. For number two, it's been a hot minute since I've had a Hubbard Scave, but we're back at them. Hubbard Scave Vanilla Imperial Stout. This is an Imperial Milk Stout, 12% ABV, and they are based in Niles, Illinois. So I've had a ton of stouts, milk stouts and normal from Weldworks. I've only ever had milk stouts from Hubbard's Cave and some additional beer styles, but I know both of them do excellent milk stouts, so I'm particularly excited. So without further ado, we're going to jump right in, starting with Weldworks Brewing Company's Fudgy Grams that clocks in at 10.7% ABV. Okay, so jumping right in with the first beer of today's Imperial Milk Stout review, we have got Weldworks Brewing's Fudgy Grams, Imperial Milk Stout brewed with chocolate fudge, lactose, milk chocolate, and over 70 pounds of Keebler grams per barrel. That's a lot of awesome sounding ingredients. So I'm expecting that this is going to be kind of s'mores-like in its presentation, albeit without the marshmallow. But we'll see. Based in Greeley, Colorado, 10.7% ABV on this one. Give a quick check of the label here. It's just dark and you can see chocolate fudge dripping off of a bite out of a graham cracker. Kind of gets me in the mood to just crack this and jump right in. So we're going to do exactly that. Gently. All right. Get this poured right in the glass. All right. Very, very dark. It feels like it's got a decent bit of resistance as it's pouring. It does feel pretty thick. I'm expecting this to be quite viscous. We're not quite going to get the whole thing in there, but wow, that is forming just a lovely head. It might get away from me. All right, that was just preemptive. I was making a point to not swish any of that around because I want to think about this on first sip. Visually, as expected, absolutely pitch black. As you can see, it did form quite the lush head here. Really, just insanely lush head. That said, there was a ton of carbonation coming up out of this glass, really fine bubbles, but it's moving quite quickly. So I'm expecting this head is going to settle relatively quickly and maybe dissipate to just one of those fine little foam bubble pads floating on top, which is fine. This, to me, I expect would be just killer off of a nitro tap, just based on how well it poured. Let's give it a sniff. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, first sniff, it's one of those beers that as I was pouring it, I could smell it, but it didn't hit me from super far away. Getting right up on it, mind you, there's a massive amount of head here, but that notwithstanding, the overarching aroma is very chocolatey, and it does smell actually rather fudgy, even though they mix milk chocolate in the mix as well. I do expect that this is going to follow kind of akin to its namesake, Fudgy Grams. I'm picking up just a little bit of that aroma of the graham cracker, but overwhelmingly, it's chocolate and chocolate fudge with the graham cracker on the back. Doesn't really smell boozy. There is a slight sweetness to the aroma as well. Of course, it's a milk stout. It does have that lactose in there. So that head is still slowly settling. So it's probably going to make a mess in my beard, but we're going to jump right in anyway. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's really good. That's very tasty. Okay, so first thing I noticed was, before the flavor hit me, just the resistance and the breadth of the body and the mouthfeel. Very large. Robust beer. It feels like it. It's a big beer, 10.7 anyway, Imperial Stout. But it feels it. It's very weighty on the palate, and there's a ton of resistance as you swish around the mouth. Gets a little bit silky, but not overtly. Not super foamy, not super creamy, just a little bit of silkiness to it as you agitate around the palate. Immediately upon swallowing, the first thing that hits you is chocolate, then a little bit of sweetness, which really starts to make that milk chocolate side come out, and then the fudge comes through. distinctly richer than the milk chocolate. So they're both in there and you can taste them independently. The graham cracker comes in the background. It's really quite nice. Pairs very well with the chocolate. It does rather put me in mind of a s'mores beer without the marshmallow. I think maybe if they had just a touch of vanilla added in this, it might taste like a s'mores beer, but that's not what this is. This is Fudgy Grams. And frankly, for my money on first sip, it tastes exactly as advertised. Fudgy Grams. Let's jump in for a little bit of the finish side. I already know the body and mouthfeel. This beer talks to you very quickly. Ooh, chocolate, slight sweetness, becomes milk chocolate, fudge comes in, intensely noticeably richer, graham cracker immediately behind it. All three are just kind of swirling and blending. So the balance on this is great. All of the ingredients have their own voice. None of them are vying for attention. It's just one after the next, and they're all just commingling, just making this delicious mix of beer flavors in your mouth. In terms of the finish, this one for an Imperial Milk Stout, quite a bit longer than average. These flavors are very bold, they are very pungent, and they are sticking around the palate for quite a substantial amount of time. The sweetness is the first to subside. The kind of milk chocolate is the second to subside. The fudge is really still lingering around a good bit with that graham cracker, and it's still going. It's probably been at least 30 seconds on that last sip. Yeah, this is a very, very long finish. Very, very well balanced. Great body, great mouthfeel. Smells and tastes great. This is overall just a great Imperial Milk Stout. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come with my scores. When we come back, we will get to the second beer of today's review. That is Hubbard's Cave Vanilla Imperial Stout that clocks in at 12% ABV. Okay, now jumping into the second beer of today's Imperial Milk Stout review, we have got Hubbard's Cave's Vanilla Imperial Stout. This one clocks in at 12% ABV. Hubbard's Cave is based in Niles, Illinois. So label art, not much to talk. It's just kind of this generic label on there. Vanilla Imperial Stout. That's all you really need to know. It's an Imperial Milk Stout brewed with vanilla. So let's get this one cracked gently. All right. We'll get this poured right in the glass. Oh, that is so dark. This one's pouring pretty thick too. Not all of the Hubbard's Caves pour quite that thick. This one's thick and dark. Wow, really thick and dark. Not sure what kind of a head we're going to get on this, but that's okay. Tried to be as aggressive as I could. It just didn't want to come out any faster than that. It was so thick. That's all right. So, visually, pitch black. Absolutely pitch black, as expected. Let's give it a sniff. It smells quite nice. Now, it could just be the mix of the malts and the vanilla in there, but there's this slight kind of barrel quality to it. It almost reminds me of buttered rum in the background. And of course, with the vanilla in there, I'm not surprised. It's a big beer. It's got a little bit of a boozy edge to it. And the vanilla really comes through quite clearly. This one has a pretty pronounced aroma. So you've got a really good idea of what to expect before you jump in. Head pretty much all the way out of the way. Look, it is what it is. Poured it home. But let's jump right in. Give it a sip. That's a big beer. That's a very big beer. This one kind of surprises me for Hubbard's Cave. Normally, they're very, very, very sweet. Not all of them, but the vast majority, and I've had many, many of their milk stouts now. This one tastes a lot richer, a lot darker, a lot roastier. So I just looked at the side of this can, and I was fully expecting that it was an Imperial Milk Stout, and I stand corrected. This is not entirely an Imperial Milk Stout review. It's just an Imperial Stout review. This one's not a milk stout. There is no lactose in here. So that slight bit of sweetness that you're getting really is coming from that vanilla. In fact, as I just sipped, I said, you know, there's just a slight bit of sweetness, but it's a lot richer, a lot darker, a lot roastier. And that's what prompted me to check the side of the can. I suppose I misread the label. That's actually okay. I'm perfectly fine with that. So most of their stouts I've had have been milk stouts. This one is a completely different animal from what their norm is. I'm going to jump in for another sip and let my mind reset. Just reset the palate here, reset the brain. Yeah. There's this nice boozy kick up front. There is this suggestion of sweetness that comes in from the vanilla. It's just the inherent nature of vanilla, the way that your brain processes that flavor. But really, this is not a sweet beer. It's very dark. It's very roasty. The malts in here, I mean, we've all seen how pitch black all of their stouts are. It doesn't matter the type. With the lactose gone, this is a completely different animal. So I think this is a beer all the typical Hubbard scaved milk stout drinkers, if they don't appreciate normal stouts and roasty edges and bitters, maybe this isn't for them. But for me, this is a very pleasant surprise. I did not anticipate it. I thought it was going to be a milk stout, and it's not. And wow, this is a big Imperial Stout. Very well put together. It's not complicated. It's a classic stout in Imperial format with vanilla added. So that vanilla gives you this suggestion of sweetness up front. The vanilla flavor comes through quite clearly, and it's mixing with this real booziness that's up front, and then boom, you're hit immediately with just richly roasted malt. I mean, like I said, it is pitch black. This is very, very deeply roasted malts here, and it's very kind of coffee bean-like. And we're coming back to another stout comparison I talk about often. This is one of those beers where the malt characteristics are similar to like a French or an Italian roast coffee bean. They're pulled right before the beans are hitting their smoke point, so it's right on the edge of being burned. That is exactly what you get in this, and it's absolutely lovely. I love a big, deep, rich, earthy, roasty stout, and that's exactly what this is. But then they added that vanilla for that little twist, and it really pairs well. Maybe you wouldn't think that it would in one without the lactose, but trust me, it really does. The vanilla speaks clearly, kind of cuts through and settles in with that booziness up front, and then you just get this really deep, roasty, bordering on smoky, earthy, classic stout flavor, and it is just bold and pungent. I'm going to jump in for body and mouthfeel and finish. Oh, yeah. Third sip, it just gets even better. So the body is really quite large. It's a very hefty beer. It feels weighty. It feels heavy. Mouthfeel, just a boatload of resistance. I mean, it's a 12% stout, and it's Hubbard scave. It's exactly what you'd expect. They really do not mess around with their stouts. That's why I try to grab every new one every time I see one pop up. I'm still getting the bulk of my beers from Tavour. It's come in even more handy in these ridiculous COVID times we live in. A quick side tangent. I do hope all of you are doing well. We all know somebody, if not you, that's been directly impacted by COVID. And please be careful out there. Wear your masks. Try not to go out if you don't have to. Use delivery services. No contact. Drop it at your door if you can do that. And just stay safe. Back to the beer. But this is really quite nice. Honestly, it's really quite nice. Very dark, very rich, very dense. In terms of how the finish settles out, this is another one with a very long finish. And it really, that intensity of flavor comes on up front and holds pretty steadily, and then it's a very slow ride down, a very slow ride down. So the bell curve is very lopsided. It's an immediate, almost straight incline up, holds, and then it starts to drop off to the end. So what you're getting in this beer is just a boatload of flavor impact up front, and it starts to slowly settle down. On the back end, you get that lingering earthiness, that lingering kind of coffee-like slight smokiness, just really deep, rich maltiness with that vanilla still just lingering in the background. So you get both parts. You get this delicious mouthfeel. You get that vanilla that they added in there. Honestly, this is just a stinking well executed stout. I mean, Hubbard's Cave rarely lets me down. This is just another one for them, and honestly, I'm grateful. I think this could be the very first non-milk stout I've had, and for me, this is a winner. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, come up with my scores. When we come back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both beers, we're going to get them ranked. Starting with Weldworks Brewing Company's Fudgy Grams. This is an Imperial Milk Stout brewed with fudge, lactose, milk chocolate, and graham crackers. They're based in Greeley, Colorado. This one clocked in at 10.7% ABV. So I've had quite a few Weldworks beers, and I've come to expect that they're going to be big and bold. This was no exception. Starting with the aroma on this one, it smelled quite nice. I got a pretty good sense of what was going to be in there. I could detect the fudge independently from the milk chocolate, as well as that graham cracker back. That said, it wasn't a super pungent aroma. It wasn't one of those that just whacked you in the nose from, 2-3 feet away. You had to get reasonably close to it, and then the aroma really came through. Could some of that have been due to how much foam had formed up on top because it formed a truly impressive head? Perhaps. But as it were, I said high end of average. It gets a 6 out of 10. For the taste. Taste on this one was really, really quite nice. All of the independent parts that went in to make this beer what it was. The fudge, the milk chocolate, the lactose certainly, and the graham crackers all came through. For my money, I would have liked a little more of that graham cracker base just to kind of build upon it. Maybe dial back the sweetness just a touch. And I'm not to say that I thought it was unbalanced, but for my taste, personally, that's how I would have preferred it. It tasted great though. I only docked 1 point. It gets a 9 out of 10. For the body on this beer was absolutely massive. It was. This is one of those classic Imperials that really feels Imperial. 10.7, that's not a low ABV, but it's not as high as many I've had that did not have anywhere near as robust of a body as this. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel, same story as the body. Absolute ton of viscosity, a ton of resistance. It had a little bit of a silkiness as you moved around the palate, but it was really just how impressively heavy and thick it was. It felt the part. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish on this one was very, very, very long. All of these flavors were very pungent, and they really, really did linger on the palate. They kind of tiered in steps, how they presented themselves, then they all kind of held at that intensity for a pretty good long while, all intermingling, and it was really impressive how you could pick them all out, and then a very slow taper down to the end of a very, very long finish. It gets a 10 out of 10. Head retention, as you might expect, this one did get a perfect 10 out of 10. The appearance, pitch black, same thing here, it gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this I thought was exceptional. Any time that there's a beer with this many ingredients in it, and I can pick all of them out as well as the component parts of the base beer, that means that the brewers know what they're doing. They've done something right. They've really thought about it and tweaked and perfected the recipe to get it to that stage. And really, just another great job here done by Weldworks. Balance gets a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling the intangible, subjectively, I absolutely loved it. It was delicious. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style. This beer had near perfect scores across all categories here. Aroma, really the only thing that let it down. Not that big of a deal in the grand scope of what the beer drinking experience was like. Example of style, I don't think it gets much better than that. I give it a 10 out of 10, which brings the total score on Weldworks Brewing's Fudgy Grams to a 95 out of 100. We're talking well above average beer here. If you're a fan of flavored milk stouts, this is definitely one to seek. For beer number 2, the venerable Hubbard's Cave. This is their Vanilla Imperial Stout. 12% ABV on this one. They're based in Niles, Illinois. As I stated in the review, I mistakenly thought it was a milk stout. Turns out it was just a vanilla standard stout. So a different direction from what I've normally had in my exposure to Hubbard's Cave here. But jumping right into the aroma was nice. It was very clearly vanilla, And Hubbard's Cave beers tend to have very pungent aromas. This was no exception. The vanilla really stuck out. You could smell a little bit of kind of the malty backbone character to it, but it was dominated by vanilla. It was quite pungent. It gets a 9 out of 10. For the taste, I commented on this is why I was so surprised and I had to double check. There was so much roastiness that came through at the end. I was surprised, but up front, that vanilla came in so strong, and that slight booziness, which I do typically like a little bit in a higher ABV beer. But on this one, the vanilla was so pungent that it did present the element of sweetness without the beer actually tasting sweet. And it was really only once that vanilla got out of the way and let the malts come through and do their thing, I realized, wow, that's really roasty, really rich, really intense, bordering on smokiness in there. This is not the normal Hubbard's Cave beer. It prompted me to recheck the ingredients list, and I just assumed it was a milk stout. It was not. But it had all of the classic hallmarks of how they build their stouts, and really, really quite nice. Honestly, I hope they do some more non-milk stout versions of their beers, because you know what they put together is a really nice roster of stouts. They're kind of known for that, and their IPAs to be certain. But most of their stouts that I've gotten access to have been milk stouts. It's a completely different ballgame once you get the lactose out of the picture. The malt bill that they have underneath their stouts is really, really nice, really superb, very deep, very rich, very bold. I give the taste a 9 out of 10. For the body, typical Hubbard's Cave, it was absolutely massive. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the mouthfeel, same thing. In fact, the body and mouthfeel on both of these were almost interchangeable. Massive, robust bodies and very thick, viscous mouthfeels. Mouthfeel on this one gets a 10 out of 10. For the finish, these were both stouts that kind of buck the norm. Very, very long finishes indeed. Flavors just lingering on the palate. It does get a perfect 10 out of 10. For the head and retention, this one did not do great. I've kind of come to expect this a little bit with Hubbard's Cave. The beers are so incredibly thick that often it's hard for it to get a chance to form a head. They try, but they don't normally do the best job. This was one of those. It is what it is. It gets a 1 out of 10. For the appearance, pitch black as expected. It gets a 10 out of 10. For the balance on this beer was great. The vanilla came in just behind that booziness up front, and then massive loads of that malt bill, which is really all a vanilla stout is. It's the base malt bill that's in the beer, plus the additive, the vanilla. I got all of them equally and could taste them all independently. That to me is just a wonderfully balanced beer. Anytime I can pick out, granted it's only a single ingredient added to a base beer, but it still comes down to balance. I got both parts and just a great beer drinking experience. Balance gets a 10 out of 10. Filling of the intangible, this is another one that I did. I absolutely loved. The first non-milk version of one of their stouts, and I was a big fan. If this is what they're about, I hope I can get my hands on some more. It gets a 10 out of 10. Finally, is an example of the style. Yet again, another beer that swept it in nearly all categories. Head and retention notwithstanding, not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. I did give it a 10 out of 10, which brings the total score on Hubbard's Cave's Vanilla Imperial Stout to an 89 out of 100. So two very, very high scoring beers, well above average, only 6 points apart. Not dissimilar in their approach, though completely different beer drinking experiences. If you're a fan of big flavored stouts, be they milk or standard, there's something here for everybody, and you cannot go wrong picking either of these. Folks, that's today's review. As always, I do sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help the channel. And if you want to stay in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, you can just click the notification bell icon and you'll know exactly when our videos drop and go live. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.